Hello, and welcome to Behind the Mic, a live chat with Sueann Ramella and Anna King. We're so happy you've joined us. I'm Sandy Billings, Development Director at Northwest Public Broadcasting, and with Sue Shepard and Matt Kawamura working behind the scenes, I'll be asking Anna and Sueann as many of your questions as we can get to, so just use the chat function on your screen. Okay, take a moment and look for that chat function if you're not familiar with it. Of course, we've gotten a few questions in advance. Let me introduce you to two women who need no introduction. First, Anna King. She's NWPB's award-winning reporter in the Tri-Cities, where she continues to delight in unearthing great stories about people from the rural Northwest. She's heard on stations around the region and nationally on shows like Morning Edition and All Things Considered and on Marketplace. Now, Anna was Washington State University's 2016 Woman of the Year. And the same year, the Society of Professional Journalists named her Journalist of the Year. Anna's impressive collection of journalism awards include 2 Gracies and the David Douglas History Award from the Washington State Historical Society. And Sueann Ramella, she's the warm and cheery presence that helps NWPB listeners start their mornings with important information and a smile. Sueann's a lot more than the Morning Edition host, though, however. She has several video productions under her belt, and she's known as the social media maven in our quarters. But that's not all. Sueann's host of the NWPB's podcast, Traverse Talks, and she produces StoryCorps segments and the history series, Past as Prologue. Yet she still finds time to raise 2 young children, and run a farm with her husband. So very few people know that Anna and Sueann were classmates at the Murrow College of Communication at Washington State University. And that's just one of many reasons why the two of them know each other so well. So let's hear them talk to each other, interview each other, if you will. Take it away, Anna King and Sueann Ramella.
Thank you, Sandy. Okay, so Anna, do you remember the first time we met? Because I remember going to visit one of our friends, Nikki, who lived in the all-girl dorm, which was better than mine. And your room was huge. And you were busy in your half of the room doing something. And I remember them saying you were going to Italy. And I thought, that girl is so hot. She's going to really get a lot of Italian boyfriends. Do you remember this?
I don't know, Sueann. I just remember thinking when I met you, I was like, oh my God, she's got a real media job and she's totally got it all together. She was already working at Northwest Public Broadcasting, and you have that smooth, sultry voice. And I thought, man, she's definitely her career is on the fly. So that's what I remember about you.
Oh, that's so sweet. I think I remember you were very, very, we were playing a board game and you had rules.
I don't even remember what board game we were playing. Were we playing backgammon? I don't know.
I don't remember either, but I do remember that you were so pleasant and we were so young. And then you went to the Tri-City Herald, and our lives came back around together when you applied for the reporter position. So that's how Anna and I met.
All right, Sueann. I wanted to know that you raise hogs, and I've heard about a particular very brutish pig that I need to know more about. About your farm and the pigs.
Okay, so when in the lovely introduction they say that I farm, I want to preface by saying it's a hobby because we don't make any money off of it. And as one very wise friend of mine said, a good way to lose money is to try to start a farm. So we thought, hey, we love pork, and my son has food allergies and he loves sausage, so why not make our own? And we're weird in that we, instead of just buying pork at Costco, decided to raise the hogs. And this year we got a boar named JJ, and I just hated him. He was just huge, and every time I'd go feed him, he was so aggressive. He never let the ladies eat. He would push them aside. And I've had a boar before that was loving and so kind. This one was a jerk. And then one time, as I just started to throw the food in there, because he just would come after me. And one time I got so mad, I looked at him and I tried to like beat him out of the way so the girls could eat. And I just said, I can't wait to turn you into soap. And that's when I went back and told my husband, it's time JJ goes. And now JJ's in the freezer.
Oh man, the life and times of the Ramella farm.
So we have that's Sandy. You're going to pipe in.
I'd like to pipe in and say that we do have a lot of audience questions that have been sent in. And this one is from a donor who loves listening to both of you on NPR, as they call it, which we know is us, NWPB. It's the same thing in many cases. The donor's amazed at how you both juggle work, your family, and your personal passions. What's the secret for the rest of us, please?
Well, I know we have it all figured out, Sueann, but I think my personal secret is to keep some exercise in the mix. News can get really stressful, and it can really absorb you through the whole day. And so in the early mornings and in the evenings, I try to squeeze in my yoga practice and walking really as much as I can. I'm also recovering from COVID, as some listeners might know. So I'm really trying to work on my breath and get, more strong so that I'm as healthy as I possibly can be. So how about you, Sue?
Therapy. I live in an area with less traffic. I mean, honestly, how do you do it all? Oh, dear listener, it's such a myth. There's no way you could do it all. And if you did, you'd have to have like the lifetime of Methuselah, because you can't do it all at once. I love that in the 80s, all of our lady mentors told us you can have it all, but I think we all realize that you can. It just isn't going to be at the same time or in the order that you want it in. So I'm lucky to have a partner who's very patient with me, and we work through a lot together. Honestly, I've been in therapy because I got some high expectations, and I've had to learn to just deal with things not being on my timeline. And then taking deep breaths, a lot of self-talk, wine.
Oh, Sueann. All right. I wanted to ask you, when did you start with Northwest Public Broadcasting, and how did you get the gig, and how come you've stayed with Northwest Public Broadcasting this long?
I know, I can't get away. I had a history teacher in college at WSU that I really admired, and she was in the Murrow building, and I was like, what are you doing here? And she said, there's this public radio station upstairs. And I'm like, what's public radio? So she brought me upstairs, told me all about it, and it sounded wonderful. And then she introduced me to the programming director, and I applied. And then I did overnights, which I really miss. We were live overnight from like 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. was my shift, and it was a good time to make mistakes, which I still do. Sorry, Carrie. And I stay because it's a great organization. I believe in the mission. I have a hard time with, no offense to the commercial world, but I really love how NPR is able to have programs that really dive deep into a subject. So the same reasons why many of our donors listen is the reason I stay. And then this area, I love raising my kids here. I like the pace of life and the activities that are easy to get to. When you look back on your time, Anna, at the Tri-City Herald, what are some skills from then that you brought to radio reporting, and what made you decide to apply to NWPB?
Yeah. So I learned when I was at the Tri-City Herald how to change clothes really fast in my car under an underpass. So like this was a big skill actually, because I would go from like a press conference sometimes to a potato field with Senator Patty Murray. And then I would have to go from the potato field down to like the bowels of the McNary Dam. This is an actual day in my life. Like I went to 3 different events in one day and they all required change of wardrobe. And so on my way to the press conference, I was throwing on my blazer and my earrings and I had my high heels, I had some stilettos. Between that and Patty Murray, I didn't have time to change my shoes because Patty Murray was already speaking by the time I arrived and I had to run to the middle of a potato field. And Patty Murray looked at my feet and she said, Anna, what are you wearing? And she was like kind of appalled a little bit, like as a fellow woman, she was just like, oh my God, your shoe wear is not appropriate. And I was like, I know, Patty, but I didn't have time. And then I ran from that interview down to the McNary Dam. They loaded me into a man basket. And then I like got lowered 60 feet down inside of a dam. So that's one of my skills, Sueann. I can change clothes, lickety split in a minute to go to a different interview. And I guess the reason that I came to NWPD was I really thought that newspapers were a good place for really gumshoe journalism, for really good stories. I learned how to feature write there, but I realized that they were not keeping up with the pace of technology and digital culture. And I just wanted to be in a place that was forward looking. And when I looked at public radio, you guys were starting to adopt more online presence. You were starting to really have some digital products. And I thought, this is the next iteration of news for me. And so I was super excited to learn audio skills from Austin Jenkins and Kathy Deschamps and Tom Bonzi. They all showed me the ropes. So it was really fun. Now it's Sandy's turn.
I've got a question from the audience. What was an early life lesson that you both have learned?
Okay, I'll go first and I'll try to be brief. It starts at Puyallup High School with Principal Pope. I wrote a thank you note to the leadership team, but it was very sarcastic and it wasn't received well. And I had good intentions that had bad outcomes. So I had to own up to them and apologize and go to her office and apologize to her too. Anyway, long story short, I was held up to some pretty high standards, which relates to a time going to the Tri-Cities on that highway. There were 3 dogs running on the highway and I loaded them up into my Nissan Sentra, angry that whoever these owners were would let their dogs roam, unaware that this is farm country. Took the dogs to the fire station and they're like, what are we going to do with these dogs? So I learned that it was a kill shelter at the time there and I felt horrible. So good intentions don't equal good outcomes.
You loaded them up to the kill site. Oh. One lesson that I learned early in life is get up early. Get up early so that you can get ahead of everybody else who's sleeping a little bit longer. And when I was a kid, we had to break ice out of the water troughs. You probably have a similar situation on your farm, Sueann. But so we had to break ice for the cattle, break ice for the horses, and get dressed and get all ready for school and then get to the bus. And I think our bus came about 5:45 or 6 o'clock, somewhere in there. So it was early mornings around our place. And then we had an hour ride to the bus or to the school, and then we got going with school. But I still get up pretty darn early every morning to try and beat the stories.
Wow, that's impressive.
Not as early as 2 a.m. though.
Well, there are times that you're up with me, and I see that I'm moving ahead. Do you want to ask me the question, or should I just answer it, Anna?
Oh, okay. That does bring us to this question is, what does your wake up alarm system look like? And when do you get up and when do you go to bed typically? And how does that mesh with being a mom in the pandemic?
Okay. My wake up system looks like a 4 foot tall 7-year-old boy with blue eyes who I don't know why he doesn't sleep through the night. He's 7 years old, but he comes down and just, he's my wake up. I swear, 2:45. And then push him aside toward his dad, and then I try to catch another 15 minutes. Lately, I've been waking up to Reddit. 'Cause I'm a little tired of Facebook, and Twitter is just a place to just get very angry. So I go to Reddit, look at some cute things or interesting things I learn. I follow botany. And then I get up and I have everything. I have my clothes pre-pandemic, my nice clothes laid out. Post-pandemic, whatever. I grab in the dark and head to work because nobody is there, right? There might be one announcer that I see, but we're in separate studios, so it's pretty safe. And that's it. At night, I wind down at about 7:30 and try to tuck in my children who refuse to stay in bed, and then I just say I'm done, and then I close my door and I go to sleep. Once they got older, honestly, Anna, morning edition is killer for young parents because infants don't follow your schedule. And as some of my colleagues would probably remember, I was not doing well. And once they started sleeping through the night, things were better. Uh, I I find this position is great for raising a family once your kids are older because I'm usually pre-pandemic home when they get off the bus. And I'm lucky right now to have a loving partner who takes care of things in the morning. So that's what's happening at my place. Anna, if you had endless resources, what kind of stories would you like to cover?
I think that I would like to cover similar stories to what I'm already covering, but I would just love to bring more power to each one. Everything that I do is usually outside, and even, pre-pandemic, I'm on farms, I'm in the wild, I'm on ranches, and they're so photographic, just like, or photogenic, just so many beautiful images everywhere. And I often wish that I had like 4 more octopus hands to like take photos while I'm recording audio and do video and tweet out everything at the same time, but I can't do all that at the same time. So, but I am pretty good at doing most of it, but just at slightly different times. But I just think that if I could get like a photographer with me, or if I could work with collaborators or have an intern, those things would help me bring more power to the reporting that I'm already doing.
Oh, I would love it. Wouldn't it be great? I mean, hey, I know Carrie's probably taking notes. Uh, you have your cameraman, then you could take all those stories and they could be little web features as well. And then we'd have an Instagram of your farm stories that you do. I mean, I love that you cover agriculture. I think it's a big thing missing in mainstream media. But in the Northwest, it's super important, especially the stories you tell, like your potato story when the pandemic was first rolling out and people were giving away potatoes. I would have loved if, first the reporting was good. Would be awesome if we had tons of money, then we could do video and photo. I
Yeah,
digress.
just like extra elements, that we, sometimes I wish that there was like a cartoonist to like put the audio that I have into a cartoon reel, because it's like an explainer story and it could really use some like, cool graphics. But it's amazing how much we get accomplished with the small staff that we have and with all of the support within our own ranks. And I'm really proud of like all the hard work that we do, but there's always the pie in the sky. There's always the like next level of journalism that we could bring to it.
Totally. I agree 100%. We're a lean, mean public media machine.
Before we go to another audience question from the audience, let me ask the audience if anyone participating has a question for Anna and or Sueann. If you put it in the chat function there at YouTube, we will try to get to it. We'll do our best to get to everything. But before we move to one more question that I do have in the queue from the audience, I wanted to know, Anna, are there any stories that ever scare you?
Oh, I have been on several really scary stories, but it was more like I was almost going to die. So that's why I was scared.
What?
There have been some creepy stories too, but like one story in particular, I told this story a million times, but I was on this huge air balloon in Prosser at the air balloon rally, and they put me on the basket with Captain Bob. We'll just call him Bob. And Captain Bob like floated around, and it was amazing. And we were just like looking at the Prosser landscape, and there was like these little lambs like like going around, and then there was like these like beautiful vineyards, and it was just amazing. And then Captain Bob says, "Oh, let's do a dip and dive." And I was like, "What's a dip and dive? What's a dip and dive?" And he's like, "That's where we float down to the Yakima River, and then we kiss the water, and then we float back up, and it'll create this beautiful reflection for your photographer, and it'll be wonderful." So my photographer was like, "Yeah," her name was Molly, and she was just amazing photographer, but she was like, "Yeah, let's do that." And so we went down, and the basket started filling with water, like filling up, Sueann, to like almost to our like hips and stuff, with cold Yakima River water in the spring. And I thought we were going to die. And I almost jumped out of the basket to try to swim to shore, but he finally poured the gas on it and got us up out of the air. But that was one of the scary stories I did. That was with the Tri-City Herald, so no liability for public radio.
Thanks, Anna.
Wait. But Anna, what about those steers who were being mutilated in rural Oregon?
Oh, yeah. Well, that was also scary. And, you can search that story by Googling Anna King and Not One Drop of Blood. But it was basically this, slaughter of 5 young bulls in remote Eastern Oregon. And nobody knew why it was happening or how it was happening. People are thinking it's like chupacabra or like Bigfoot or maybe like aliens. And the cuts on the animals are so precise and clean. It's really exacting, and it's very scary. And that story got over 1 million hits on NPR's website when I did that. So it was pretty cool to see that story run. But it was very creepy when I was out there on the site looking at the dead bull. There wasn't a bird, there wasn't a bug, there wasn't anything moving, and it was just eerily still. And it just made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, and you kind of looked in the woods, and it just felt like there was some kind of sinister presence there. And it was just very creepy. And it's terrorizing to those ranchers who are losing their animals and what's making up their livelihood, and they just don't have any explanation for it.
Yeah.
Has there been any follow-up? Has there been any follow-up on that story possible yet? Or have you heard anything yet? Or
I've done 2 more stories on that since that first, that first one that I did. There has been subsequent killings of cattle on different ranches down in Eastern Oregon. And so it's a continuing saga, and I'll continue to follow that.
Great. Let's go to an audience question about your past and current mentors and influencers. So this is for both of you. Who are your past and current mentors or influencers, and who do you follow on social media that you especially like? The answers might be related and they might not. How about Anna?
You go first, Anna.
Really? Okay. Well, one of my big mentors is a gal named Phyllis Fletcher. She's over in Seattle, and she was my former editor. And I would say almost all of my former editors are somewhat mentors to me still. Colin Fogarty, Kathy Duchamp, and Phyllis Fletcher. But Phyllis has been key in my life, and I think that it's really fun to have a mentor to kind of, just get that second opinion on what you're doing with your career or on a hard story. somebody beyond where you work, just to kind of sharpen up a little bit sometimes. I continue to seek her advice. And on Twitter, I wanted to give a shout out to, I love Sueann Ramella's tweets. And so I follow Sueann Ramella. And so she's at Sueann Ramella if you want to follow Sueann.
Wait. Anna, my Twitter is just me stalking people. It's my Facebook feed that makes you laugh.
Okay. Well, but is your Facebook public though? Not really.
It might be after this.
Because I do love your Facebook, but I wanted to give you some followers here. So.
Oh, thank you. Carrie's like, no, do not make your Facebook public.
Do you follow Patrick Atuma, Sueann? He's really good, and he is the star of a podcast called Poetry Unbound, and it's a Krista Tippett production. She does the On Being series, and this Poetry Unbound is a really cool poetry reading. They read the poetry, then they have like a little class about it, kind of like tell you what it's about, and then they read the poem again, and it infuses so much meaning into the words the second time that you can just really live with that poem. And so I really like following him. Radio Girl Murphy is another one on Twitter. Her name is Patricia Murphy, and she does the Seattle Now podcast, and it's really great out of KOW. That's a really smart podcast. And then I like Leah Satilli, who is the author of Bundyville podcast. And she's down in Portland, Oregon. She does some very long form journalism, is a young gal about our age, but is just writing some really key pieces on kind of the Clive and Bundy gang and this kind of extremist cowboy type person that is creating chaos in the West, like the occupation at Malheur that I covered a couple years ago. So I can go on, but Sueann, you go.
Okay. When I heard about this question, I have to go back in time. First, my mom and my dad, because they asked me what I wanted to do with my life, and they helped me by encouraging me, right? So I had very good parents. And then I had good teachers. I had an elementary school teacher, Mrs. Miller, in the 3rd grade, who had a dad make us a giant cardboard television set that we could stand behind. And while the other kids did plays and stuff, I read newspaper articles. So that's how it started. And then Mr. Polensky in the 4th grade wanted all of us to do presentations in front of the class because he said there are 3 things people are afraid of in this world, and death is one, and so is public speaking, and I'm going to make you face your fear. And it just so happened that I was decent at it, and the kids stayed in for recess to learn about braces because that was what my presentation was on. Then in high school, I had a very good journalism teacher. I also had one in junior high. I mean, all these teachers and mentors who helped me. And I say that because my dad was in the Air Force, so he was on TDY a lot, and my mom is from Korea, so she's an immigrant, and usually immigrants don't really know everything that's available to them in the States. So I was fortunate enough to have a lot of people around me, the village, that helped and guided me, and I'm very thankful for that. So who do I follow on social media? My quick answer is I know they introduced me as the social media person for NWPB, but I'm getting wary of it, and I think many of us probably are. So I have, as Anna King mentioned, follow like On Being because I'm more into the spiritual stuff, and then I follow Heather Cox Richardson. I think her history take on current politics is fascinating, but without all the hype and controversy. So I appreciate her. And I'm crazy for a woman on YouTube called Li Ji. And it's because she does rural Chinese farming. And I know it's crazy, Anna. She like took a whole pig and chopped it up and dried it off of her roof. And then they made something with the face. I know it sounds disgusting. Maybe you have to be like me to enjoy it or something like that. But she's great. She's like Martha Stewart, primitive style in China. And then there's also a Jiangxi in China who I follow on YouTube. I love that stuff so much. Anyway, that's me.
I see them too, Sueann. It's great.
They're great.
We're getting some questions coming in from the audience. This one is for Anna, and it comes from Paul. Thank you, Paul. What's the one thing that you would like residents of Western Washington to understand about Eastern Washington?
Just one thing?
Well, you can pick more. I'm sure he won't mind.
I think, Paul, the one thing I would like people to know about Eastern Washington is the beauty and the diversity that is Eastern Washington. I think when people think of east of the mountains, sometimes they think of apple farmers or hunters or, they just think, oh, that's over there. But when you explore Eastern Washington, I'm surprised at how much I'm able to find in Eastern Washington that takes me to different countries or different cultures or different ways of living, and just the pure beauty of Eastern Washington and the diversity of landscape that you can find here. There's mountains, there's rivers, there's lakes, there's coulees, there's draws, there's the gorge. I mean, it's just a wonderland of geology and diversity.
Hey, if I may answer Paul's question too. I'm from the west side, like Anna. Actually, Anna and I grew up pretty close together. You're from Roy, and I'm from Puyallup. We were surrounded by trees, and then the east side, not so much, not the same type of trees, a lot drier, at least where we are, right? And it took me a while to fall in love with the place, and what it was just the different pace of life. It's a lot slower than the west side, but not like terribly slow, just gives you time to think and be instead of rushed or stressed. And the other thing is the people I feel that I meet east of the Cascades, I honestly get the sense that they feel underrepresented in the politics on the west side. And perhaps that's because the west side has a hard time telling Easterners exactly what they're getting for their tax dollars. And it's because those mountains, they're just not easy to just hop over. So I think it's very much like the geography, and we need to work harder to reach across those mountains and share with one another who we are, and find out that we have a lot in common, and that is this beautiful state that we live in. I'm so glad we're all outdoorsy.
Sandy, did you have more questions for us?
I had to unmute. Yes, I do. Bruce asked, what, and I'm going to ask Sueann to answer this first, but you may have an answer as well, Anna. What was your worst interview? Do you have anything like Terry Gross and the dude from Kiss Encounters?
I wish. That was intense. I was in Pasco coming home when I heard that interview. If you haven't, you all need to look up Terry Gross and that Gene Simmons interview. He was nasty to her, and she called him out, and I was like, yeah. She said, "You're obnoxious." And I thought, I've never heard the word obnoxious sound so good and so mean at the same time. I personally have not had a terrible interview like that, but I have recently interviewed someone that it was very difficult to draw answers out of them. And I just turned to my producers and I was like, there's nothing there. That was very difficult. And I had done my homework, and I just feel sometimes the chemistry is difficult sometimes, or people, not everybody is willing to just open up. You get a lot of yes or no answers, even if your questions are very broad. So it happens, and then you just move on.
I had a really hard interview one time. it was with this gal named Natalie Swan, who, you know, we talk often now, but she is a Native American woman, and we were trying to talk about her culture and about environmental restoration and about protecting the environment at Hanford, and trying to kind of understand, you know, what she was doing. And she was so nervous and she was so scared to be interviewed, and she was so shy that we sat for maybe a couple hours in the sun on the banks of the Yakima River trying to make her comfortable enough to talk. And finally, I just knew that she needed something more. And so I just reached over and I just held her hand. And it's the only time I've ever tried to do that with anybody. And I just held her hand. And then we were able to like break the silence. Actually, she just was like, she just poured out. And it was still a difficult interview, but it was just that human connection that she needed to be like, it's going to be okay to tell this story. And I think sometimes people need permission to tell their story. They've never told it before, and you just have to wait for it to come out, even if that's a couple hours in the sun.
Oh, what a great story, Anna. I I feel that really speaks to this thing in journalism. Perhaps you were taught this too. I think it was the tail end of when we were in school is the separation. And I don't feel like you could always do that because we're all humans. And while we try to be very, scientific and unbiased, it's we're human. And then you're able to get her to probably feel better about things. That's really cool.
Yeah, and of course, like if she didn't want to hold my hand, I wouldn't have done that. But she just was so nervous that I could tell she just needed kind of some reassurance. And that's like literally the only time I've ever done that in an interview in 15 years of being a journalist. But I'm glad I did, because her story was one of the top stories in my series, Daughters of Hanford. And it was just amazing that she was able to speak with us about it.
Yeah, that was a good series. And sorry, Sandy, I'm just going to say I had the privilege of meeting David Green, who hosts Morning Edition with NPR, and he relayed that even as a host, sometimes your emotions come out, and I think that's okay too, if it's appropriate. You don't want to cry at a terribly inappropriate story, but when they're really humanizing stories, like when all those fires were happening, I mean, you feel people's pain, and you can't be cold-hearted. You want to be with them spiritually during those times.
Yeah, yeah, that's really true. And a lot of times people, like pre-pandemic, a lot of times after a tough interview or a tough situation, that you're like a mudslide or a fire, you talk to somebody and you're the first person that they've been able to talk to tell what happened to them. And often they just want to hug you. And so I just stand there and I just let people hug me, because sometimes it's cathartic for them to just feel like they told somebody what happened, and now this is the closure. So I've gotten a lot of hugs, Sueann.
Well, well, Anna, you are so huggable. Pre-COVID. Speaking of which, oh, Sandy, I'm sorry, I keep interrupting.
Let me just, no, that's quite all right. Let me just point out that we have probably just a few minutes left for questions, because we do have one more thing we want to include in this gathering. So I'm going to invite any questions from the audience. If you have any, get them in now. I do have one more to share with you, but I will be happy to save it for another few minutes. Please continue your conversation.
And shall we remind people about photos?
Oh, yes, let's remind people about photos.
So,
You go, Sueann, you know more than you think.
Anna and I put together some photos with the help of Matt and Sue. I think a link will be appearing somewhere for you. We also have some captions there. And Anna, I noticed with these photos, there's a theme between you and I, which is like food, landscaping, outdoor stuff. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question for you, Anna. You had COVID-19, and this was kind of fairly early. I mean, a couple months after Washington started with the shutdowns, what have you learned about yourself because of that illness, and what do you think is important for people to understand about it?
Yeah, I guess what I've learned about myself is that I'm pretty darn strong. Even if you kick me, I can do it, and it's really tough, but I got through it. And there was some times when I wasn't sure how it was going to roll. Like, I was really worried about it, and everybody around me was really worried about it. But I think watching other people worry about you is almost as scary as being worried yourself. You know,
Oh,
when you can hear it in people's voices that they're really scared, and when you can hear it in, you know, doctors' voices of concern, like, that was hard to go through, because you kind of you're reflecting, like, you can see the mirror of, like, oh, this must be bad because they're speaking that seriously. But on the good side, I think that I've learned that if you get really kicked down, it just is an inch back at a time. Like, when I first got quote unquote better from COVID, my first outing was to walk down the street to the stop sign, which is only 4 or 5 houses away. And I could barely do it. I just could barely even make it there. And it took me a long time. I think it took me nearly a half hour to get down and back. And and then I, you know, started walking around the block. And then when I could do that in a half hour to 40 minutes, then I started doing 2 laps, and it took me like an hour or so. And it's just been a slow struggle back. And now I'm right at the edge of about 4.5 miles regularly, but it's really hard. Every, you know, half a mile that I go further, it's really tough on me to try to do that extra bit. But I'm still just trying really hard to get back. So I think that's the key, is if you get COVID and you think it's going to be forever, it will be a long time possibly, but you can make it back if you just take a little bite at a time and just try very hard. But I guess what I would say about COVID is just that if you don't think it's real, it is real. You know somebody now that has had it, and you just have to do everything you possibly can to stay well and to take as little risk as possible. You know, do you need to go to the store, you know, twice this week, or could you just go one time? Do you need to go get makeup or something, or could you, you know, get a delivery, or do you need to actually see your family, or could you Zoom the Thanksgiving with them? I think these are the choices that we really need to, like, look hard at, because it is so scary to get it, or to give it to somebody that you love.
yeah. That leads to our next question, and I'm going to take it from Sandy. The question came from, I believe, a listener, and it is, what are our plans for Thanksgiving? What activities do we miss the most, and who will we miss the most? Do you want to go first?
Sure. I just got a call like 2 nights ago from my dad, and my mom couldn't even say it because she just
Oh,
loves Thanksgiving and her family so much. My mom is the matriarch of our family, and, you know, she always says the prayer, and we usually have 45 to 50 people at our Thanksgiving often. We usually invite guests to come that don't have anywhere else to go to Thanksgiving, and we just nestle them right into the mix. And we have, you know, several families that are not related that just come. And one time we had a coalition from like Zimbabwe, I think, like 3 or 4
wow.
like people that were visiting, and they came to our family Thanksgiving, and we all hold hands and say a prayer at the beginning of the meal. And I could just hear it in her voice. She didn't have the strength to tell me, but like, my dad called, and we weren't going to do it with everybody. We were just going to do it with my mom and dad. And and at least have a small Thanksgiving. And my dad just said, hey, kid, it's a no-go, and we just can't take the risk, and neither can you. And we've all been through this with you, and we just can't do it. We gotta be safer. And they're on the west side of the mountains, and I'm over here, and both of the counties that we're in are really high COVID rates. And it's just terribly hard. I just was so bummed, but I understand totally, but it's just really hard to make these decisions. How about you, Sueann?
First of all, I love you and this story. That's fabulous. It warms my heart and it makes me feel so mean because I will not be missing the stress of family gatherings for Thanksgiving. If my mother and father are watching right now, you're going to need to mute me. But like my mom, and this is her way of showing her love, it's just like it used to be just the three of us. And then when I got married, the four of us. And like it was ham, turkey, roast, all the sides. And this woman would not really let me help. So it was just her expressing her love with all these complicated meals and trying to make this amazing thing, only to become incredibly stressed out. And then, when you're stressed and you want something perfect, any little thing can just flip you over. So now I'm okay with missing Thanksgiving this year. I remember telling my husband, "Oh my gosh, this Thanksgiving is going to be so chill." So, yeah, sorry. I'm all about staying home with just the immediate family, and I'm cool with that. We'll call and Zoom grandma and grandpa's. My in-laws are, they're probably going to have barbecue. We'll miss them too. We'll miss my parents, but it's going to be stress-free, which I think honestly we all kind of need a little less.
What are you making, Sueann?
My husband's got some Polish stuff in his life. So we do pierogies, which is laborious. So pierogies, and then we do an animal. Like every celebration in America has to have some animal sacrifice. So we'll eat something like that.
Oh my goodness.
Maybe a side of kimchi. Now it's back to Sandy.
Yeah, I have one last audience question, and that is if each of you wrote your autobiography, what would the title of the book be?
You go first.
I think it would be called Backroads. I've spent a good portion of my life on gravel, and going down 30 miles down a back road and finding out who's down there and what they have to say. And I like doing that. So I think that I'd want to talk about all the stories of going down those roads, almost getting eaten by dogs, and pulling out the story anyway. So I'm not kidding, Sueann.
I believe you.
I believe you, yes. Sueann, do you know what the title of yours would be? At least what you picked today.
The title of my autobiography would be "You're Fat and Other Ways My Mother Expresses Her Love."
Well, that's great. That's super.
Okay. For those of you who don't have any Asian culture in your life, it's real. Criticism is how love is expressed. So my mother loves me a lot.
That's great. We do want to, one reason I wanted to wrap up questions as quickly as possible or earlier than we may have expected is because we have one more task before we end this gathering today. And that's that Anna and Sueann have sent each other surprise packages. We trust that you have not peeked into them yet and that you will peek into them now with us.
Okay, Anna, I'm going to go first.
Okay.
Because I love opening up boxes. Those unboxing YouTube things I used to watch those. Oh, it smells lovely. Oh, you're so sweet. What is this, perfume?
Look inside, man.
So look what we have here. Beautiful box. I'll open this up and share with. Oh, Where did you find these soaps? Terra Foma soaps, Magnolia and Tonka. That's neat. Anna, thank you. This is so sweet. Orange cinnamon spice and a loofah. Darling, I'm so glad you bought this for me because honestly, I haven't gone to the grocery store in a while. And I got a boy and a girl in karate.
Little TLC, Sueann.
Thank you.
I'm gonna open this box. It's like huge, and it's got like a lot of tape on it, so it's gonna take me a while. So fill up the time with nice chitter chatter.
Niceties.
Yeah.
Let's see. Anna King, my memories of her. She got married at a winery, and it was lovely.
Yeah, you were my MC.
I was, and there was one person who gave a toast, and bless his heart, I was trying to get rid of him because he was like minute 8.
We tell that story all the time, like how you were trying to like get him off the stage. That's like one of our favorite wedding stories. What in the heck is this?
Oh, here we go.
Ooh, it's a wine cork with NPR on it. Oh, I love it. Oh, my husband's gonna go wild.
Doesn't that work? And you got married at a winery and you love wine.
Is this like this is a box of swag?
I hope you don't have one already.
Ooh. It's a
An
North
NWPB mug.
Radio mug. I'll put that up here. All right.
There's one for Andy too.
What is this big thing? Oh my God. It's a Sueann Ramella pillow.
Oh, that's too good.
That's hilarious. Okay, I was very serious about what was in this box. Somebody even told me it might be like prophylactic for my microphones, but I wasn't sure. I said I didn't know what it was gonna be, but I didn't know that there might be some COVID protection going on. So
You could use that pillow as a mask.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just gonna go to all my Zoom meetings like this.
That's perfect. That is perfect.
Well,
we so appreciate your fun, ladies, as well as your the audience member. Thank you so much for coming to hang out with us at Northwest Public Broadcasting. It has been a fun conversation with Sueann Ramella and Anna King. And we didn't get to one question. Somebody who obviously knows about Kerry and his Porsche habit. But we'll try to, it's rare to get a ride in one of those. Let me just leave it at that, Bruce.
Yeah. I admire his Porsches from afar because I don't want anything to happen to them.
But not having gotten to the question, every question, we did get to most. It just gives us an excuse to get together again another time, and we hope that that happens soon. Thank you all for being such loyal supporters and listeners and fans and watchers of Northwest Public Broadcasting.
Oh, I hope you had fun.
bye.